All right. In this video, we're going to be talking about how you can actually create the perfect pitch for your agency. And so the kind of question that I want you to think about is, could you be actually accidentally putting your leads, your ideal clients, your prospects to sleep during your pitch? And I see this ultimately happen so often, where someone goes off camera, where someone looks disengaged, where someone actually asks the agency to kind of stop pitching and actually have a conversation so that they can get to know each other. And I've seen this time and time again, and I don't want it to happen to your agency with that next pitch that you have coming in so that you can grow your revenue. Hey, I'm Robert Patton. I'm the founder of Creative Agency Success, and we work with creative agencies exclusively to help them simplify and scale their business. So here's the kind of base thing that I see. And if you're in the European market, you're talking about it as a creds deck. And if you are in the US market, it's a capabilities deck. And this is often one of the first places that a client actually gets to know you. But often, one of the places that I see that is the most boring to the prospect. And one of those pivotal pieces of actually building a relationship, because a really truly effective capabilities deck can have a client understand how, can understand why, can understand exactly the system, and can understand and actually have and believe and have trust in the agency as well. So I want to talk about some key pivotal rules in order for you to be able to build a capabilities or creds deck that allows for you to actually build authority, create trust, and actually be able to be in a good place with that prospective client. The first rule is 15 minutes or less. And that ultimately means that you need to have a deck that's 15 pages or less, because you're likely speaking going to be a minute to 2 minutes on every single slide. You don't want to have your slide be loads of information that they ultimately could have read on their own, which is one of the sort of cardinal rules that you don't want to break. But here's the thing that I see happen so incredibly frequently, is that agencies get into this place where they're nervous during a sell. So they kind of ended up being in this word vomit place where they end up explaining loads about what they do that the client does not care about. Let's talk about the minimum amount that they actually need to know in order to have a trust that you know what you are doing and that they are not going to be the guinea pig. The first place that I'd like to start every single capabilities deck is actually in the agency why. So actually creating a true alignment between the agency and why the agency does what they do and what the ideal client and what that prospective client is looking to accomplish. And then we actually want to start to build some trust and expertise. And this often happens in the client wall, where we're describing our core zone of genius, what is our core service offering, and how we actually help clients. And then we actually typically start to go into the makeup of the team. So that can either be images of the team with a little bit of a bio, or the team makeup of who each client ultimately works with, whether it's an account executive, a designer, a strategist, whatever that team makeup actually looks like. And then the other thing that's really important that loads of agencies miss is the process by which they actually are able to generate the result for the client. Remember, ultimately, what you actually offer is not what they're after. They're after the outcome of what your service is going to help them accomplish. And really having an understanding and actually selling that outcome and the assurance that they're going to actually get the outcome is incredibly important here. So making sure that the way that you're describing what you do, all with that end outcome in mind, is extremely, extremely important. And allowing for them to understand how that's going to work, exactly how you do it. Because if you're able to do this in a meaningful way, this means that the client is going to actually want to work within your system. They're not going to want to break your process, because that's how you have the end result, which is ultimately the thing that they are there for in the first place. And then finally, wrapping things up with a couple of case studies, 1 to 3 case studies that are 1 to 2 pages each, that allow for you to actually be able to have them really be able to understand how you've been able to take that process, that system, your service offering into a client that looks very similar to them. Now, you've had the capabilities deck, and now we're actually going into the discovery call. And so here's the things that I see go wrong here. Again, speaking too much. very common thing that happens here is that you get too far into actually explaining and telling them why they need you. Let's flip the script here. Let's actually have it be, and my general rule is that you want to have the prospective client speaking 80% of the time. If you are speaking more than 20%, you're actually doing it wrong. And so what you actually want to do is you want to start to actually be able to create and have them understand the gap. Where are they right now? What if they tried to do it? And have them articulate to you why they need you. Not why you are the best for them, but why they actually need you. What have they tried? What have they done? What is working? What isn't? So ultimately, you can actually try to show them and have a conversation around existing clients that you've worked with that have actually managed that exact same problem. It creates a greater amount of trust, a greater amount of understanding, and ultimately, you're able to utilize this information. And at this stage of the actual sales conversation, we're getting what we refer to as conceptual buy-in, where they're actually making that emotional sale, emotional buy with your agency, where they've made a commitment, if you will, to actually wanting to work with you. They haven't crossed T's and dotted I's and making sure that they ultimately can afford you. But ultimately, what you want the client and the prospective client to leave this conversation with is, wow, that agency is phenomenal. They absolutely know where I am because they can hear, they've both seen and heard me fully. They asked intelligent questions around my exact problem to really understand the core issue at hand, not the symptoms of the problem, but the actual problem, and of actually giving me some examples of how they've solved it in the past. Now they actually feel safe. But the concept and the thing that you want them to walk away from this call with is, wow, they can definitely help me, and I'm a little worried that they're going to be too expensive and I can't afford them. One of the things you really want to make sure here is in this call to actually get budget. And I see so many agencies avoid asking for budget in this conversation. And I can tell you time and time and time again, sales calls that I've been involved with and the agencies that ultimately feel more confident in this phase are able to actually get it. And it's all centered around the confidence that you have in a sale conversation. I understand to begin with, it may feel a little awkward asking that question of how much money do you have, right? That's kind of the question that you're asking. But you can actually do this in a meaningful way as long as you're able to actually preempt the conversation, ask them for permission to ask detailed questions during the conversation today, and ultimately allow for you to get ultimately what you need to be able to provide them with a plan of action. Now, let's talk about essentially the commandments, if you will, of a discovery call. Make sure that you have the decision makers on the call. Barring that you're working with Apple, you're not going to get Tim Cook on the call, clearly. But let's get the stakeholders and the actual decision makers on the call. Number 2 is absolutely do not lie. Number 3 is never overpromise. Number 4 is do not oversell because you will lose the client. Number 5 is don't sell to someone ultimately that you cannot help. And then do not sell what will not help. Only sell the services that are ultimately going to help the client get to where they actually want to be. This shouldn't be, and I assume for most of you, this isn't actually a get-rich-quick money scheme. This is something that is a vocation for you. This is something that you absolutely love and enjoy. And I want you to actually be able to get greater fulfillment by having greater impact with your clients and being able to work with people that absolutely adore and enjoy working with you. And you're producing work that you are really, truly proud of. And the way to do that is following those commandments. Now let's talk about actually getting the close and the final yes. All you need to do really is actually take all of the things that prospective client said during the discovery call and put it into your proposal and actually just re-articulate to them the emotional reason why, that conceptual buy-in that they got to actually allow for them to make the logical. So you've got first the emotional sell, and then you've got the analytical buy, the one that's going to start to rationalize the decision that they have already made, which is what the proposal is actually for. It's not meant to sell, it's meant to close. So all you want to do is actually articulate to them, where are they today? What are their goals? How are you going to measure the success of that campaign or that project? And ultimately, what type of impact and what does it actually mean for them? You're going to allow for yourself to reconnect that emotional experience they had during the discovery call to this call. And then you're going to explain to them exactly how you're going to do it in a reasonable amount of detail, but not overly detailed, to give them exactly phases of the project, what exactly are going to be the deliverables, and how is it going to actually result in the outcome. And then ultimately, once they have made a commitment to this process and to this strategy, you then show them the price, allowing for them to, a lot of instances, you want them to actually feel a slight amount of ease in this conversation at the end, where they're like a little bit relieved that the price isn't as high as they thought it was going to be, but still the price is at a point that it was a little bit jarring, but not overly so. This system I've seen help so many agencies being able to actually get to their revenue goals, their growth goals, and ultimately their profitability goals, because they're able to sell in a different method. If you have any questions around this method of how to actually sell for your agency, do me a favor, comment below, or let's schedule a profitability accelerator call. I'm absolutely happy to have a conversation with you to give you some tidbits and some pointers on how you can make some refinements around how you're positioning your agency, so ultimately you can sell that next real, true, ideal client. If you enjoyed this video, do me a favor, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button to make sure that you get our videos on an ongoing basis so that you can simplify and scale your agency.